This is an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder.
Andrew Young was a top aide to Martin Luther King Jr. and one of history's most important civil rights leaders. He's been a witness to history and made history of his own. He's been the mayor of Atlanta, a congressman, and U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. Ambassador Young, along with his godson, has written a book based on his mentoring of his godson, Kabir Segal. The book is called Walk in My Shoes. Ambassador Young joins us on the line right now. Hello, sir. How are you?
Very good. How are you?
I'm fine. It's a pleasure and honor to have a chance to talk to you. In writing this book, and you've written many, and you've written this with your godson, you are mentoring him, so it gives you another chance to reflect on some of the things that you have done and you have witnessed in your lifetime. Is it sometimes hard to believe the journey your life has taken?
Well, it isn't hard for me to believe it because I've enjoyed every minute of it. And I still look back on it with very, very fond memories. And actually, I delight in telling those stories over and over again. But Kabir came to interview me when he was in second grade for his second grade newspaper, and that impressed me. And we stayed in touch. I later worked with his father after I left City Hall. We were fairly close. We went to Africa together when he was in high school with my family and his family. And then he went to Dartmouth and London School of Economics. But he always called me up to ask my advice on stuff. Well, one of the history professors, Doug Brinkley, he mentioned this to Doug Brinkley, something I said, and Doug Brinkley's from New Orleans. Well, he was in New Orleans then, and I'm from New Orleans. So Doug Brinkley suggested that we tape these conversations if I didn't object. So he started taping our conversations, and that's where the book came from. But I think by that time I was 76 and he was 26 when we started taping. And I said, look, I'm not running for anything anymore. I really don't care what anybody thinks about what I think. I'm going to shoot it to you straight. It won't be politically correct, but the important thing is for you to develop your own view of the world and, not walk in my shoes or try. In fact, he was talking to me about going into politics, but he had a job at J.P. Morgan. And I said, no, God has put you in banking, and we need good people with good ideas and clear conscience because ultimately most of the problems we're going to face in this 21st century are economic problems. So we have to have people of conscience and people of goodwill in the financial sector as well as in politics. But you're in the financial sector. Stay there as long as you can.
The struggles that you've witnessed through the course of time, you look back at it now, here we are in 2010. We've come a long way. As far as you'd like to see us go, or is there still a great distance?
No, actually, we have come a long way socially and politically, but we're actually slipping back economically. We had reached, I read another book, Arianna Huffington's Third World America, and a simple fact just shook me up that the trains, between New York and between Chicago and Minneapolis don't go as fast now as they did in the 1950s. And that we are in an infrastructure crisis, an environmental crisis, and the things that require government action are being neglected because everybody wants to be through with government and wants to put all their hope in the private sector. And I believe in the private sector too, but the private sector is not going to put sewers in your cities. And it's going to take a lot of government incentive. In fact, we forget that the progress we've made has not, well, the private sector feeds off of government research, off of the experience of government investment, and then it takes it and capitalizes on it. But for the most part, the hard issues of our time are not easily profitable. And so the long-term risks and the long-term vision, I think, at least in infrastructure development, probably must come from the government still.
I look back at your career through the work you did in civil rights, all the way up to when you became ambassador to the United Nations. I look at how far the United States has come with the election of someone like Barack Obama. I see similarities in your career and your temperament to his. Do you think in a different time and space you could have run for president of the United States?
Well, if I had come from New York or Chicago, but I'm from New Orleans and Georgia. And the difference is that the scars that I have coming up, I couldn't be quite. I was as cool as Barack Obama at points in my life in crises, but to be consistently as cool and stable and rational as he has been would have been very difficult for me. There were times that it was necessary for me to just bubble over. And because of my preacher background, I thought I was being prophetic. And maybe I was, but I was also speaking the truth in a way that it made a lot of people mad. Nothing I've done has been popular when I started doing it. And I think that he's able to come in now, in part because we broke down a lot of barriers and we made a lot of people mad. And we threatened the ideas of the majority group, but we threatened them in such a way that we helped them to grow and we made them better. But it still doesn't mean that they appreciated us. In fact, Dr. King used to say, it's a 10-day nation. He said the first 10 days, no matter what you're doing, everybody's going to say, you're wrong, these are communist ideas, or you're trying to upset our great society. The second 10 days, they'd say, well, maybe you got a point, but we would have done it if you had not been so rambunctious, see? And then the third 10 days, they take it over and they forgot you had anything to do with it. And it was their idea all along. We saw that happen with Lyndon Johnson. We heard him tell us in 1964 there was no way he could pass a civil rights bill, a Voting Rights Act. He had just passed the 64 Civil Rights Act, and we said, but we still don't have the right to vote. We got the right to vote as a result of Selma and his efforts in Congress. But when he had a conference at the White House in September of 65 or early 66, he didn't mention Martin Luther King's name. It was as though all of this was the work of the Johnson administration. And we were not offended by that. We just understood that was, we had done what we had to do, and he couldn't have done what he did if we had not done what we did.
With all you've done, what do you think is the most important aspect or part of your legacy?
Well, I think what I like most is Atlanta, because I think that I was assisting Martin Luther King, and it was his movement, and I was assisting Jimmy Carter at the UN, and those were his policies. When I was thrust into the leadership of Atlanta, we were in pretty bad shape economically, and polarized racially, and I was able to pull that city together. When I started talking about making Atlanta an international city, they actually made cartoons about it, and they ridiculed it. One of the columnists wrote about how ridiculous it was that I wanted Atlanta to be an international city, and he used as a symbol of what I meant. He thinks people want to fly to Lagos, Nigeria. Well, the truth of it is, right now, the flight between Atlanta and Lagos is the most profitable flight in the entire Delta system of almost 1,000 flights a day. The one to Lagos makes the most money. Atlanta, Johannesburg is second. And we have 11 flights a day to Africa. We fly to some 36 countries every day. We are an international city. We also, during the 8 years I was mayor, attracted $70 billion of foreign investment from around the world. 1,100 new companies moved into Atlanta, and we created 1 million new jobs. When I started, we were just a little over, just almost 2 million people. Now we're almost 6 million people. And we brought the Olympics in, the next decade. And it was what I call public purpose capitalism. What we did in Atlanta, we designed and we defined the public purpose. In our airport, for instance, we wanted a big international airport, but we didn't have the taxpayer money to do it. So we defined it. We put it out to bid. We sold tax-exempt municipal bonds. And we raised the money privately. The airport was constructed privately. And it's the busiest airport in the world now. And we're doing an additional $6 billion expansion now, in addition to, we were already the busiest in the world 5 years ago. Now we're adding $6 billion international terminal to it. And I just feel very proud of this city. We're still a slight majority black city, but no contract on that airport was done, and no contract was let on the Olympics that didn't have minority and female participation of at least 25%. And in the Olympics, it was 40%. And so we have had economic growth that has crossed racial and gender lines. And that's what makes that's something I'm most proud of.
Well, there's a lot for you to be proud of, and it's a pretty impressive track record, to say the least. The book is called Walk in My Shoes, which you've written along with your godson, Kabir Segal, and I thank you very, very much, sir, for taking the time to be on the program with us.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Ambassador Andrew Young, the co-author of Walk in My Shoes. You can go to my website at thestufffile.com, go to the What's On page for this show, which is show number 0061, and you'll find links to Ambassador Young's website, plus links to either Amazon.com or Amazon.ca, where you can order his book directly.
You've just heard an exclusive excerpt from the Stuph File Program with Peter Anthony Holder. To hear any or all of the full hour-long shows, visit thestufffile.com. Stuph is spelled S-T-U-P-H. That's thestufffile.com. A presentation of Flying Fish Communications.